I worked a 9 to 5 forever. I worked for Ryder. I worked for mom and pop companies. So I felt that grind. I can't wait to leave. Oh my God, I got to go in here another day. I got to deal with these drivers. And if I would have just shifted my mindset simply, right, there's so much insight I could have had during that time that I spent complaining about work that I could have been learning. So if just that simple, quick mind shift could be a game changer for anybody. So I just kind of throw that out there. Take your time, be patient, and build your wings up, man. Build your wings nice and strong. So when it's time to fly, you fly.
You're listening to Freight Famous, presented by Rose Rocket, bringing you the people that make trucking move. From behind the scenes into the limelight. Here's your host, Justin Bailie.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Freight Famous, a podcast produced by Rose Rocket. New episodes of Freight Famous will be released about twice a month. On this podcast, we talk with guests about how they build, scale, and automate their trucking and transportation and logistics businesses. I'm your host, Justin Bailie, co-founder at Rose Rocket. I'm super excited to introduce my guest today, Rahmel Wattley. As a founder of Truck and Hustle, and you've probably all heard of it, if you're listening to my show, you're definitely listening to his, a transportation media giant, this is Truck and Hustle. Rahmel has built a community of professionals in transportation and logistics by telling their story. T&H, as we're probably going to call it today, has grown to a multifaceted media company that has grown to 10 million views on YouTube, which is super impressive, 1 million audio downloads, and 500,000 that is, social media followers, as well as in-house produced events such as Freight Fest with thousands of attendees. Overall, Rahmel's mission is to provide inspiration, information, tools, and resources while bridging the knowledge gaps and bringing diversity to the transportation and logistics media sphere. And I've been most excited and really looking forward to having Rahmel on the show. So, my friend, thank you for being here today.
Man, thank you for the introduction, Justin. It is a pleasure to be here, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So, what inspired you to tell transportation and logistics stories?
Yeah, so I have been working in transportation and logistics for half of my life, 20 years or so. I started out as a CDL driver, getting my CDL license, but I quickly realized that driving a truck wasn't for me. I transitioned into becoming a dispatcher for a small mom and pop company. Just haphazardly, I got an opportunity. There was a young guy who was running the operation. I was actually looking for a driving job, and he introduced me to the concept of dispatching. I told him that, I wasn't really, fond of driving, but it was kind of a means to an end at the time. And he was like, hey, would you like to be a dispatcher? And I was like, what's that? He was like, it's pretty much managing the guys, man, telling them where to go on their routes and so forth, just keeping them straight. And I had some experience doing that just from some prior, businesses I had done when I was young. So I was like, yeah, cool. I'm very personable. I know how to manage people. Not a problem. So I fell into the business. Honestly, I never had any intentions on getting into transportation. Didn't have anybody who was in a trucking business in my family, any kind of background in it. It was just honestly a job that kind of fell in my lap. So I did that. I worked for that company for about 4 years. I ended up running that company. The guy who actually brought me in ended up getting fired. And I was there by default. We were on location at a warehouse. It was called Ball Plastics. They did plastic bottles for Pepsi, for Pepsi, and we delivered the plastic bottles throughout the country. And I ended up running that operation. It was a multi-million-dollar operation. So I really cut my teeth there and learned about transportation and logistics, just management and everything that it takes to run a trucking business. After that, I went on to work for Ryder, RIL division, which is like their local. I did the CVS account, so like a local grocery account. Ryder Integrated Logistics is what it's called. I was a manager there, so I just continued to build my career there. Learn much more. Ryder, of course, is very process oriented. They're one of the larger mega carriers in the space. So I learned a ton about the business there. And then I started my own business in 2015, just really inspired, always wanted to, get into entrepreneurship. I started a staffing company. So I started a staffing company for CDL, Class A and Class B drivers. And that was my first business. But during that business, we actually did really good our first year. We did about $1.2 million in revenue, but it was really all luck, right? It was just because there was a huge demand on drivers at the time, and anybody could have started that business at that time and done well, right? It wasn't because I had any kind of, certain skills or I was better than anybody else. It was just strictly demand. At the same time, I made a ton of mistakes during starting that business, right? Just not understanding some of the compliance aspects of things, not understanding how insurance, workers' comp worked. And I made a lot of mistakes. And at the end of the day, even after making $1.2 million, I owed workers' comp about $250,000 to $300,000, right? So even though I was in the green, I still end up in the red at the end of the year because of misinformation and miseducation. So that really prompted me, as I went through that journey, when I kind of started running that business a little bit more passively and I had some more time, it prompted me to want to start something to educate people on transportation and logistics, not only just all the different opportunities, because again, I started with a traditional trucking background from getting a CDL to running a trucking company. Then I started a staffing business. And I realized that, hey, there's all these different ways and all these different niches and all these different verticals of transportation that you can get into, and you don't have to even drive a truck, right? It's just such a vast industry, the complete supply chain from end to end. So that was my vision for Truck and Hustle. I wanted to educate people on those opportunities because a lot of the people that I knew nothing about what I did, right? They didn't understand our world. It was just kind of foreign to them. And I felt like we were kind of like a part of like a secret society. That was really cool. Very, very stressful, not easy at all. But, I feel like once you understand transportation, logistics, supply chain, it gives you an upper hand on just how the world works. So I wanted to just kind of do that. And I wanted to do that through telling stories. I always thought that, telling stories is very powerful. I've always been an avid podcast listener. So I've always in the back of my mind wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't know what to do. And typically I'd listen to podcasts just on general business, growing your business. I was very interested in e-com and real estate, things like that, stock. So I would just kind of just listen to everything business oriented. And I never really heard anything that was focusing on the transportation industry, right? And then when I did my research and found some things, a lot of the media there wasn't really, to my liking, or it didn't really resonate with me. And I just was kind of bored of it, right? I was kind of like, man, I wouldn't really listen to this show. It's cool, but it's not something I'm going to tune into every single day or every single week because it's just not speaking to me. So I said, light bulb moment, let me create that thing that would speak to me, that would resonate with me, that would resonate with people like myself who are entrepreneurs, who want to hustle, who just have that spirit, who want to hear these amazing stories of people who just, started and built something from the ground up. Whether they're entrepreneurs or intrapreneurs helping to work somebody else build something from the ground up, and just really tell those origin stories. And I think that's very powerful. And that's what separated Truck and Hustle from what everybody else was doing. I think everybody else was focusing more so on, the larger enterprise, solutions and C-suite and, kind of 1,000 trucks and up, right? Like those type of verticals. But we wanted to focus on the small carrier, which represents the majority of this industry, right? 80-90% of the industry is small carriers, small mom and pop businesses that make up the whole. So that was who we wanted to speak to. And we just started doing that, man. And we did it through storytelling. And when we did it, it just really grew legs very fast. The traction was immediate because I think it was just a void out there in the market for those type of stories. People started, reaching out. The feedback was crazy. We grew like a tribe of people who just wanted to hear these stories. And it started out with me kind of reaching out to people. So my very first interview was a guy who I worked with at Ryder. I watched him transition from a company driver to an owner operator, purchasing a truck, getting his own authority and building his business. And we just talked about that transition, right? Watching him go from a company driver to owning his own business and all the struggles. And at the same time, he watched me go from his dispatcher to owning my own business, to where at one point I was dispatching him and I was working for Ryder, to the point where I was sending drivers to Ryder through my staffing agency for them to work there. So now I'm billing them as opposed to working for them, right? So just really interesting how that was just full circle. So we covered that, during that podcast. And then we, did some more. I reached out to some more people in my network. And then I just started like reaching out to strangers, man, just other people who I saw doing interesting things, who had interesting stories, interesting businesses at this time. It was pre-pandemic. So, it wasn't as popular, as trendy as it became during the pandemic. As tons of authorities, started after 2020. Everybody wanted to get into the trucking business now because they saw, once everything else shut down, the only thing that was still running was those 18-wheelers, right? Like that trucking was still going. So it became very popular. So I think we caught that wave also, right? Because we started prior to that, but we caught that wave when everybody really started getting interested. So now everybody wants to get in trucking. Everybody wants to hear these stories. People are looking for different verticals. Okay, not only do you have to, do dry vans or reefers, you can do heavy haul, you can do hot shots, you can do, car hauling, you can do oil and gas or, frac sand. There's all these different verticals that's in the space that you would never even think about, right? But when you look around, your office or your house or wherever. It's like these things are getting here somehow, and it's all because of these different interesting niches of transportation that are getting them to you. So that's what we wanted to explore. And we just grew, man. We grew tremendously. Our podcast grew, our audio grew, and then we started doubling down, and we said, we want to start, doing more in-person content, because we just felt like we wanted to, number one, grow our network, start reaching out and connecting with people in person. And just number two, we felt like the stories would just be more compelling and more visually appetizing to watch if we're there on location, inside the warehouse, at the yard, wherever this person conducts their business, we could actually see it visually. So we just really invested in the platform, and just, I kind of expanded, got with the team. I actually, the first person I got was a friend of mine from childhood, man. I knew him since he was 5 years old. And he was actually working for like Vice Media and some, other companies doing like videography and so forth. Told him to come and work with me, man, help me build out Truck and Hustle. And that was kind of like the start of us doing the video. And then just kind of forward in the story, as we grew that, now people wanted, they're asking to do in-person meetups, and how could we, further those interactions? So we started doing networking events, right? We did our first networking event last year, June, in Atlanta, Georgia. We wanted to do something small. Our goal was 80 people, ended up being about 150 people there. That was another light bulb moment. Like, man, we packed this place out to the point to where the fire marshal was like, there can't be anybody else in this place. So now it's like, we got to do this again. 2 months later, we go to Houston. We do another one, 450 people. So now we're like, all right, we really have something here. People want to connect on a deeper level. People want to, people from the Truck and Hustle community want to get together. We start doing the networking events. Then as we're doing these networking events, we start thinking, man, how could we take this to another level? And we start thinking conference. Right? How do we bring everything we've done on Truck and Hustle to the big stage? And that was the birth of Freight Fest. And we did Freight Fest. The first one was November 4th through November 6th. Last year, we had an amazing turnout, extremely successful, to the point to where this year we're going to double in size. And we had to get a bigger venue, right? Because we just, the reception was amazing. And, we just continue to try to add value where we can. We try to stay in our lane and just listen to our audience and see what they want more of. We don't try to force anything on them, and whatever feedback we get, we try to create those offerings for them. So right now, just to kind of give you an idea of our business, we obviously we do the podcast, we have our networking events, we have our conferences, we also have our Truck and Hustle merchandise, right? Our t-shirts, our hoodies, our hats, which people love. You'll see them sharing it all over social media, just representing the brand and just, that mantra of just Truck and Hustle. We're also launching a community really soon, within the next 50 to 75 days. It's going to be more of a internal community that's kind of, going to be for business owners and professionals in transportation and logistics, a safe space where conversations could happen that are, filtered and that we can have like real conversations about growing a business. That's something we're really excited about. And yeah, man, we have a bunch of other different brands and products that we're working on kind of behind the scenes that are in incubation stage. But we're just working, man, and just building this thing out.
So I've got like 65 questions. There was a lot there, man. You've got a great energy. I like listening to you.
Thank you.
Okay, so where do I want to go with this? So I guess I'm interested in. There's a couple of things I want to call out. Well, you made a comment sort of earlier in that statement, or I guess the entire monologue was, you mentioned you started a business that ultimately was, sounds very typical or entrepreneurial in, I'll jump off the cliff and figure out how to build a parachute on the way down, right? In terms of your staffing business, no clue, no understanding of, probably when you got the bill, you kind of knew something was coming from the IRS, but maybe not. And also, all of a sudden, shit, this got real, right? All of a sudden, in terms of like when that sent. But I guess and it's interesting because I actually have a relatively similar story. Our story, actually, believe it or not, is fairly similar in some ways, how we got into the industry, kind of, act first, learn later type type motions. And it brought to my attention. I have a lot of, do you ever think about that time in that business, in a way of like, man, had I just like asked someone for help, how different things could be. It's the one thing that resonates for me, again, very similar experience in a business that was going well. And I just got totally blindsided really from like a cash flow management perspective, because I just didn't appreciate the sacrifices required in the long tail and how like long it takes to build these things. And like, don't believe the hype, don't believe your own hype. You know what I mean? You think things are going really well and you take your eye off of it, and all of a sudden it's like, man, this is a long game here. And I guess my question is like, how do you think about, if you were to do that again, how would you do that differently?
So to your point, man, things could go bad really quickly, right? And once what happens is when you start any business, if you don't do things right in the beginning, it's very hard to catch up, right? Mm-hmm. So like once you get into the operational side of things and you start making money, it's hard to really build that foundation because you can't go backwards because the mess is already kind of made. Yeah. Right. So that's kind of where we were at. We made a huge mess. And when we realized what the mess was, you can't go back. At this time, you're just trying to pick up the pieces, and it's just going to be terrible until you could just kind of figure it out. So yeah, doing things differently, 100%. I mean, when I started, I honestly just, I was looking around and I was like, I'm seeing other people who do this. I would speak with the owners of these businesses, and I'm like, man, you're not smarter than me. I don't think you're better than me. I don't think you work harder than me. So if you could do this business, I know I definitely could do it. And that was like the only thing I went off of, just the fact that I saw somebody else doing it, and the fact that I had insider knowledge, right? So because I'm working as they're working as my vendor, I'm seeing what they're billing. I know what they're paying. So I'm feeling like I got this, right? Mm-hmm. I have all the information I need to put it together. But of course, there's a whole bunch that I don't see, right? And you don't realize that until you kind of get into it. So 100%. And that's really the catalyst for what Truck and Hustle is. Honestly, like we need that mentorship. We need that information beforehand, before we get into the business and before we jump, because yes, you're going to fail. And there's nothing wrong with failure. The best teacher is failure, but you can save yourself a lot of heartache, a lot of money, a lot of time, and a lot of effort if you just know a few things beforehand. And I would definitely encourage anybody to, talk to somebody who's doing it, talk to somebody who's been there before you get into it. I know a lot of times pride gets in the way, right? You feel as though, hey, I can figure this out. I don't want to feel as though I'm looking for a handout, or I don't need anybody. I can do this on my own. But one thing I've learned, especially in business, people are, especially successful people love to share information, mm-hmm. right? So they love to tell you their stories. They love to give you their war stories and talk about all their wounds and everything they went to, because like they say, it's lonely at the top, right? So when you get to a certain point, there's not a lot of people you can have conversations with. The only people you really can talk to are other people that you're trying to bring up to the top with you. And successful people love to bring other people up. And that may be contrary to popular belief. You may feel it's hard to get a conversation with someone at a certain level, but it's really the total opposite. Anybody who I've spoken with who's at a level that I aspire to get to has been so open and so willing to share so much information. And it's not even about the money. It's not about how much can you pay me. It's literally about, man, I just have all this in my head. I'm just going to die with it. I'd rather pour this into somebody else, right? So that it can continue on. And then their impact and their legacy is through that information that they share. So I guess one big thing that, one big takeaway is don't be afraid to reach out to people who are doing what you're doing, who you deem as successful, because 100% they will share with you. And if you come across one that doesn't, of course, a no is just the pathway to the next yes. So just keep on asking, get that. But mentorship is so important, man. It's just really the key to everything, man. You can save yourself a lot of time, and look, you can get there right without it 100%. Because I'm sure somebody will debate me and say, hey, I had no mentors, I had zero this, I did it all my own. Sure, there's those outliers. There's people who are able to do it and make it happen. Kudos to you. But at a grand scale, like most people aren't. Most people need a little bit of help, and there's nothing wrong with looking for that. And I would 100%, if I could do things over with the staffing company, I would have, as opposed to just kind of peeking from behind the curtains and seeing what I could see and putting together, the different pieces and trying to fit it together in my own head. I would have reached out to one of those people and said, hey, you run this business successfully, and obviously it would have to be somebody who's not in my space or competing. How can you help me do this in whatever way, whether it's, you getting a percentage of my business? How can we partner? How can I become an agent for you? How can we do something to where you already have this figured out? I just want to build my own business, but I'd like to leverage, what you've built at your foundation. How can we work that out? Because I'm not opposed to that either, right? Partnerships, they're great if they're the right type of partnerships. So leverage the people around you, leverage your network. And I think that, people miss that a lot, man, but it's so important. And typically when we hear these stories, we'll always go back to, hey, if I could have looked back and do it differently, I would have done it this way. So yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, I'll say just sort of I think what I heard you say there, in a sense too, is when you're sort of starting that initial business, and if you're hearing Mel talk and you hear yourself in him like I do myself, or when you listen to the show and you hear yourself in me, because Rahmel and I, we are. If we took personality tests, our personality, they're coming up very, very similar scores and same quadrants. We're the same kind of guy. What I think he's referring to, for clarity, is a sort of confirmation bias, where you start seeing what you want to see, and you almost you willingly act oblivious to the details and the things you don't want to look at in order to continue to validate your feelings, so you can continue to move forward. Because specifically when you are doing it alone, it requires this level of conviction and self-conviction that if you let in, you have to be very mindful to let in some of the obstacles or quote unquote negative things, to slow the process down a little bit, to open your eyes a little bit, because it's very easy to get tunnel vision, see what you want to see, blaze ahead. But I promise you, it will come out in the wash in the end. And so I think there is certainly there's a risk to doing that. I want to, just pulling off of that, I want to kind of go back to before all this started and before you got into trucking. So you've been in trucking half your life. Actually, a quick question on that. When that business ultimately went away, like you right now speak very vulnerably and very openly about it failed. These are the mistakes I made. For me, I know personally, so I'm going to project onto you a little bit here, but it took me a long time. You mentioned the word pride, to openly talk about my failures. So once it was inevitable that the business I had was going to fail, or it was failing, it took me a long time to openly discuss that. Did you go through a process of sort of shame and hiding it and trying to sugarcoat it and paint it in different ways? Or did you just come out and say, man, like this didn't work, I'm an open book, and on to the next thing?
Yeah. So, that's a great question. And honestly, I think when I was going through it, I didn't really have a platform to necessarily share it, or I didn't have necessarily people to share it with outside of like my family, who already knew, right? Because they were going through it with me. So there was no one for me to really be honest with. But then in building the Truck and Hustle platform, I felt that it was my duty to be honest with my audience and tell like those real stories, because that's what makes, number one, myself unique. And that's what really the catalyst of the platform is, to talk about failure and to talk about origin story. So I have to lead with my own, or else I can't expect my guests to do the same. Right. So, yeah. So in building a platform, it was, a decision that I made to kind of be more open. Now on Truck and Hustle, I really focus on my guests more than me, but I'll sprinkle little nuggets about myself and about my past in there. But I really like to highlight my guests. Right. But when I do interviews like this, I'm very, very transparent on, all the failures that I've had, because again, I still have failures to this day, even in building Truck and Hustle. I'm still learning this media sphere and how to navigate through this, and how to properly monetize podcasts, and how to, run this as a business, right? It's great to create a platform, but as we invest more money and we invest and we do all these things cost. It has to make sense at the end of the day, right? So I'm still learning, and I'm very open with that process as well. So I believe in building in public to a certain extent. I feel that it's great for people to, see your wins. And I feel that if people are able to see your story and just win with you, they'll support you, right? If they see you when you were down, they'll celebrate you when you're up, because they understand where you came from. They know that this didn't come overnight. There was no, silver spoon or nothing just handed to you. You worked for it. You were vulnerable and you gave it your all. And for me, I think that's important for our community, because everybody, we're all out here struggling. It's not easy for any of us. So, I want to show that. And I want people to know, like, I don't have it all. I don't have it all figured out, and this is my journey, just like it's your journey. So, I'm not the expert here. I'm trying to figure things out myself every single day. And I try to be very transparent with that.
Yeah, I feel that. So you've mentioned the word multiple times, community, and you mentioned earlier Truck and Hustle community. How would you describe the Truck and Hustle community?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the truck and hustle community are very, a like-minded community that's very entrepreneurial, very driven, wants to succeed, just looking at different opportunities and just are really just hustlers, right? Just people who are obviously in the transportation and logistics space or want to be in the transportation and logistics space. And people are just looking to grow. And I think the foundation of our community is just really just like, love and care for one another. Like, for example, when we do events, man, we just had an event in Philadelphia and we had about 300 people there, in a room. And, this place is packed full of people. And if you just go in the room, just the energy there is amazing. Everybody is laughing with each other. Everybody's connecting with each other, sharing business cards. There's nobody sitting in any corners, like, looking for someone to talk to, because I think that we've set a tone, right? So when we do an event or when we do anything, the tone is already set. So people understand that when you walk into a truck and hustle room or a truck and hustle event or anything that has to do with us, you have to be coming, ready to share, ready to learn, ready to help. It's just these different core principles that we've kind of said without even really saying them. Like, we don't even have to say it. People just know it because it's what we put out there. It's the energy that we exude, So anytime you watch a truck and hustle show, it's always positive. We don't focus on negativity. We don't try to find gotcha moments and try to figure out how we could expose you or try to, we're not doing clickbaity things. We're trying to put people in their best light, because at the end of the day, our goal is to expand people's minds, right, around the space of transportation and logistics. If you can hear these stories and your mind is expanded and you could be inspired, that's the key for us. We want you to be inspired first. We want you to get the inspiration, and then we want you to mix it with the information and to do it right. But first, we have to inspire you because it's hard. So, as an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to get up every day and do the same thing and keep on, fighting this good fight when all the odds are against you and every day doesn't look the way that you want it to look. But so we need that inspiration. We need to see other people who are doing it within our proximity to say, hey, they got through it. I can get through it. They came from this background. I can come from this background. They had a single parent household. I have a single parent household. Just all these different things that make us the same. And that's just what we really try to pull out and extract from people. And I think that's what, like I said, that's what really makes it special. So, yeah, man, that's what the community is about. I don't know if I answered your question, but it's just really a community of transportation and logistics professionals that are interested in helping each other grow. If I could just put it in one sentence, that's what it would be. Everybody's interested in everybody else's success, and we all want to see each other win.
Yeah, no, there's something really, and I think it's not to be overlooked how difficult it is to manufacture what you're doing, because this isn't a manufactured approach. You can see it, you can hear it, you can feel it. This is how authenticity looks at scale, right? And this is a really difficult thing to do, because it is so tempting at times to be pulled away from the mission, to get distracted from, let's go wider, right? Let's do more. And as you go wider, you inevitably will water things down. But it's like, because for someone like yourself, who is probably on a weekly basis, and I might be, not doing you any justice, it might be more often, seeing new opportunities to grow the business and being able to stay disciplined enough to stay core to the mission, the consumer, for lack of a better term, in terms of your audience, your community, that is, and being able to build extraordinary value for that group and watch that kind of multiply and live on the edge of that, and recognize also that, like, as you said, I think it's an interesting, it's a caveat, but it's much more than that, really. You said, I came from a single family home, parent home, and other people did as well. So it's like, you're also saying that I'm going to put that out there, knowing that I may alienate people with two-parent homes. For instance, you're just telling your truth as it is. You're not worrying about trying to capture every single person, but that that there are, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 people like you who want to hear from you, who can be helped from you. And by staying true to that mission, I applaud you, because that is way harder to do than it appears.
Yeah, just for clarity, I didn't come from a single parent home. I was just saying that as an
Got
example
it.
of some of the people who are on the platform.
Got it.
Just for clarity. But yeah,
Sure.
but still to your point, it's the same thing. But yes, it does, and we very often talk about when we have our meetings. We have daily meetings every day, myself and my team, and we talk about the different content that we're going to put out there, the spins that we're going to be put out on the content, because we understand that as a media platform, we have a lot of power, right? And we know that we can control a narrative to an extent, right? So we're very careful about the way we put content out there, what we say, and the type of content that we put out there. And there's a ton of content that don't make it through those filters, right? We're like, nah, that is not a part of our mission, so that doesn't need to be a part of it. And a lot of times it may get a bunch of likes, it may get a lot of views, but that's not the message that we're trying to send. So you're 100% right. And it is hard to turn your back, your turn away from those things, because I understand the algorithm. I understand social media. I understand what's going to make people click and what's going to turn people's heads, right? I understand the psychology of it. So it is easy to do a grab and just say, hey, let's just do anything just to get people talking and create, this bubble of whatever, right? But that's not what we're about. And we're playing the long game. We know where we want to be and we know where we're going. So we're not interested in that. So we just stay true to ourselves. So yeah, it is difficult, but for us it's easy because we've just made that decision early, right? That's who we're going to be, and we're not going to deviate from that.
Well, great discipline, nonetheless. So on the notion of kind of adding some new things, you've recently added Shift, which is a sort of tech entrepreneur focused thing, more as I understand it. And I actually think I'm going to be a guest on it in the near future, which will be fun. We'll turn this around, right? This will be hilarious. In terms of so I guess one thing that's how is that going? And then maybe on sort of second part of that question is, what are you learning as a result of that new product, really?
Yeah. So number one is going amazing, right? The second part is, what am I learning? It's everything. And that was the reason for Shift, because I understand the transportation pretty well, right? Just from being in the industry. I don't know everything. I'm not an expert. I don't ever proclaim to be a guru or anything like that. But I understand the business, right? From working in the business, from running my own business, and so forth. But tech, man, I don't know anything about tech, right? So when we get into this tech space, technology, EV, autonomous, all these different new and innovative things that are coming out, I'm like, man, I need to get into that space, because that is where it's going. That's where the ball is going. And whether you like it or not, I need to be educated on that, and I need to educate my audience on it as well, right? So I don't want to miss that train. So for me, I'm like, what can we do next? Not only to create more content that's going to be relevant to our audience and our community, but what can we do to just, continue to sophisticate what Truck and Hustle does and continue to add more value? And I was like, man, we need to share helpful insights in freight technology. And that's what Shift is, the acronym. So we came up with the idea for Shift just solely but based on tech. And I'll tell you what, one of the catalysts for it is just getting around a lot of these conferences, right? We went to Manifest and just saw all the different innovations and all the different tech that's there. And we're like, there's at least 300 different tech companies in here, if not more. That's probably understating, that are selling all these different solutions. Why are we not talking to them? Why are we not telling their stories? Why are we not, showing and demoing their products, right? So it was just another opportunity that we felt that, again, this is where the industry is going. Truck transportation is very antiquated. It's one of the last industries always to kind of evolve, because we just have such an old mindset and doing things paper and doing things manually for whatever reason. We don't want to grow out of that. But man, come on, man. We all know that it's coming, right? So everything's going to be automated soon, and we just have to get on board. So for me, Shift was my way of learning about it. And also, for my own selfish reasons, I'd like to get into tech. Right. To just from a business perspective, man, I know those tech valuations are 10x, man, So if we could add some tech underneath the Truck and Hustle umbrella, right, underneath the TNH Media umbrella, I think that would be amazing. So for me, the cheat code, again, is I get to talk to different people in tech. I get to ask questions. I get to learn, and I get to say, hey, that's a great solution. I like how they approached that. I like how they solved that problem. Because I'm always thinking about problems we could solve, because we have a amazing community, right? So for me, it's like and again, going back to what I said earlier, we don't force feed anything on anybody, but we want to make organic offerings to our community that make sense and that they ask for. So now we start going through the process of surveying and polling and seeing what people are asking for and seeing what's relevant and seeing what's important, because we have this community that we can do that with. And now we say, hey, maybe we can build something in that space, right? But a great way for me to do that is to get to start meeting some of the people who are builders in the space. And I could kind of, take on some of that energy and maybe become that builder myself. So that's really the goal.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really smart play. I mean, you're sort of scratching your own itch there, and I think, and again, giving information out to the community that is relevant. It's important, I think, to take all this the hustle narrative. It's almost like you've got like truck and hustle, and the next thing is like truck and scale, right? Because you can like hustle all you want, but you're only a dude, and so it's like, how do you have machines and for just to be derogatory about it, but like robots do it for you basically, right? And I think that becomes that next phase of hustle. It's do you have the drive to get going? Like 0 to 1 is all about hustle. That's a pure hustle game. I don't care what technology you have. If you don't have hustle, you're not getting to 1. But after that, after 1, there is a lot of, and again, I don't mean to kill the staffing agency business narrative today. I know that was meant to be a bullet point. We're hitting on it. But the thing is, like, going back to, because I think a lot of what I'm trying to do is also speak to entrepreneurs or people, I think often with, like, how many people do you talk to that are sort of like the closet entrepreneurs? They want to do something. It's just that there's just that like that little thing in the way. And in their minds, I think for you and I would say it's a little thing in the way. In their minds, it's a gigantic thing that's in the way. I can't do it for all these different reasons. And I think so. We kind of talk about mission and community. I'm really trying to help people who are kind of seeing the world through that light of like, I really want to do this thing, and my best life's work is waiting for me on the other side of this anxiety that's blocking me from moving forward. I'm trying to like shrink the anxiety a little bit by opening up about, what it takes to kind of take that first step. And a lot of that 0 to 1, going back, that is just purely hustle, but setting up those systems early days and thinking about scale. How can I do the same thing with the same amount of people at 10x the velocity? That's really where technology starts to be part of the narrative, right? So I think, so on you, like, great, because I think this whole hustle mentality of 0 to 1, well, now you've got super fans, and now you have a responsibility how to take them from 1 to 2, right?
That's right. No, 100%. So just to kind of answer your question, the first question you said is, how many people do I talk to that are looking to make that step? Yeah. And the answer is, tons. Obviously, there's always people who are reaching out. My circle is more so comprised of, I like to network up and down, of course. Yeah. So I like to network of a lot of people who I aspire to be like. I like to, I have a bunch of peers, and then I try to give as much information to people who are on their way up too. But I also say this to people who are, looking to make that step or about to make that leap. I tell people to be patient also, right? Mm-hmm. Because you don't make the leap if you're not ready. I tell people, like, if you're working in a business that is, congruent to, or adjacent rather, to the business that you're trying to start or trying to get into, spend as much time as you can there incubating your skills, your network, your resources, and learning as much as you can about the business on somebody else's dollar. Don't rush into this process because it's not going anywhere. Entrepreneurship isn't going anywhere. It's going to be there. So I tell people, just take your time, because if you get involved prematurely, it could be the death of you. Right, like, for lack of a better word, and you may never be able to have that opportunity to get back into the game. So I just tell people, don't rush the process. Take your time. I rushed the process, and it was almost the death of me. So I was just prematurely trying to jump in. I saw an opportunity, and I said, let me go. Let me get it. And because of that, I could have spent more time learning more, asking more questions, doing my due diligence, and I could have started off a lot better and probably had a lot more success had I did that. So I always tell people, although we preach entrepreneurship, there's nothing wrong with entrepreneurship. There's nothing wrong with working in a business, helping somebody else grow. But it's all about how you approach it. When you walk into work, we have to stop approaching it like, looking at the clock and waiting for 5 o'clock to hit. You have to start looking at it like, man, how can I just help this company be the best company ever, be a shining star? And how can I also learn as much as I can to where when I'm ready to go, I'm equipped with everything I need to do everything I need to do? And use your time wisely. I think we need to stop focusing on just being there, because I worked a 9 to 5 forever. I worked for Ryder, I worked for mom and pop companies. So I felt that grind. Just, I can't wait to leave. Oh my God, I got to go in here another day. Oh, I got to deal with these drivers. And if I would have just shifted my mindset simply, right, there's so much insight I could have had during that time that I spent complaining about work that I could have been learning. Mm-hmm. So if just that simple, quick mind shift could be a game changer for anybody. So I just kind of throw that out there. Take your time, be patient, and build your wings up, man. Build your wings nice and strong. So when it's time to fly, you fly.
I think that's excellent advice. And I would add to that value creation is not time honored. So this isn't a stock that is going to change direction overnight. Good ideas are eternal. And the reality is ideas are cheap. And trust me, someone's already had it before. It's execution that separates from the idea. And if you are creating extraordinary value, you will win, whether it's this year or next year. So to further your point, I think the driving force of impatience and hastiness is that somehow this is time bound. And if I don't do it now, somebody else is going to do it, or the opportunity is going to go away. Value is eternal.
You're 100% right. I always say there's nothing new under the sun, right? You could do a simple Google search and figure that out, right? Every idea you ever had, once you start looking at it, oh man, they got my name.
It's like to say, try and find a .com. You won't find it. It's already been named.
Business away, right?
Exactly.
It's nothing. Right. Somebody's already thought about it, so don't sweat it. It's okay. Like you said, that key E word, execution, baby. It's all about execution.
I want to hit on this. I'm just going off script a little bit, but just sort of a note. You talk about diversity in trucking a lot, and I want to understand about how that is that part of your community, and what are you seeing in terms of diversity that maybe other people aren't, or owners of companies aren't? Like, what's the tell me the secret about diversity in trucking.
Yeah, so I think right now, trucking has always been very, very segmented, right, and very cliquey. There's tons of different organizations. There's tons of different ethnic groups that all stick together in their cliques, right? Mm-hmm. Like you can go to different areas of the world and you'll say, oh, this particular group runs this area. This particular group runs that area. It's just the way things are, and it's the same way throughout the whole transportation and logistics ecosystem, right? So diversity is a difficult conversation because, historically, the industry has been so segmented and so scattered, right? So what we've tried to do is bring that together, right? Because there's not many platforms that are focusing on just, I think the way that you show the way that you're able to tie people together is through storytelling, right? Because the only way that I can see myself in you is when I hear your story and I can find some type of commonality. If I don't know who you are as a person and I don't know your story, I have a bunch of assumptions about you that may or may not be true. But the only way for me to know that for a fact is by hearing you out. So you have to create these types of platforms to be able to hear people's perspective, right, in a safe space, and have somebody that is willing to listen and willing to, not try to combat and not try to argue and push back. No, just listen. It's all about listening. And that's been the problem with trucking and just America and the world in general. We don't listen to each other. Everybody has their own point of view and they just run with that. And that gets passed down from generation to generation. And if nobody stops it, it'll just continue. And that's how we have these, for lack of a better word, cancers that just continue to grow. And then we never, ever work together. We always feel like, oh, I don't work with them because they're like this. Oh, this particular group is messing up the industry. They're taking all the cheap freight. Oh, they're doing this because they're that. Where do we get these things from? Do you have data to support that? Do you have analytics to support that? How do you come to these conclusions, right? People have all these conclusions about people that they have no data to back up. It's just because I heard or someone told me or whatever, just to gossip in the rumor mill. So I think diversity is the most important thing in transportation because we have to work together. We all have different opportunities, we all have different skill sets, and we all have different ways that we can drive the industry together, right? Different resources. So in order to really make this work for everybody, where everyone can win, because it's not a great industry when there's only 1% of the people at the top winning, and the 99% who are working harder than the 1% are losing. And could barely afford, ramen noodles at the end of the week. That's not fair. That's not a fair industry. So we have to figure out, and I don't know the answer, but all I could do is start having the conversations. That's it. That's my part, right? I'm going to try to create the platform. I'm going to try to do the events. I'm going to try to do the things that's going to bring people together to start having those conversations. And that's my contribution. You guys are smarter than me. You figure out how we're going to fix it, but I'm going to try to create the platform that allow people to start feeling comfortable speaking and being around and connecting with each other. That's what I think is the key. We have to start taking down those walls that we've built around ourselves, man, because it doesn't help. It doesn't help us personally and doesn't help the industry at all.
And that, my friend, is why you're having success. Talk to me about, I imagine, and this is me, I'm completely just like, when I say imagine, I'm like, I am making this up. But my guess is that you are attracting a lot of people to your shows. You're honestly, man, yourself. You are attracting a lot of people. I think that would be curious about the industry. Maybe they're not in it today. They're thinking about it, or they know someone who's in it. It's like, I feel like you are an amazing channel to take them from outside the industry to inside the industry. Is that an accurate assessment? Do you have a lot of people that are coming into the industry for the first time that are seeking you and coming through you? Is that in an indirect way? Is that a fair assessment?
I mean, I would say that's a fair assessment for sure.
And then do you find, so how are you helping these people, or what is it that the advice that you're offering them, or that the show maybe sort of more broadly and organically offers? And I say the show to capture everything, but just like, for the sake of a word.
Yeah, so I mean, I offer them just, number one, we offer them a free platform to learn, right? So our content is all 100% free. You can go listen to it, whether you're Audible, learner, or you like to watch visually. You can just download our content and just listen, right? You have tons of content to just sift through. You can search for whatever topic is important or relevant to you, and you can find it. And just also, I like to just ask people, you really have to think about, what do you want your life to be? You have to architect your life, right? Like, you may feel like you want to get into this industry, but it may be for the wrong reasons, and you may not know exactly what you're getting into. So when somebody wants to get into the industry, I ask them, well, if you could design your perfect life, right? If you could look 5-10 years down the line, what would perfect life you look like? Does it look like you on the beach somewhere with a laptop, with a cell phone and a margarita, chilling, checking your emails and then going back to the beach? Or does it look like you hustling, like you're in the truck and you're calling and you do like because everybody is built differently and everybody wants a different life. Everybody's motivated by different things. Me, I'm lazy. Like we talked about earlier, I don't want to do much work. So my life, when I think truck and hustle, I'm thinking, okay, we've built this amazing platform. How can I automate it as much as possible so I don't got to do as many interviews, so I don't got to do this, how can I take more work off myself and have somebody else who believes in it to continue to drive it? That's what I'm thinking, right? So I ask people the same question, like, what do you want your life to look like? And once you can see that picture, now we have to start reverse engineering what it's going to take for you to get there. And then when you start thinking about it, and then we start saying, okay, well, you sure you want to start this trucking company? Because once you do that, not only you gonna have these trucks, you have all these drivers that depend on you. These drivers, you have audits that's going to be coming. You have compliance issues got to deal with. All these different things that you may have not been thinking about. The fact that you're going to be up every single night, 3:00 in the morning, you're going to be getting 10 phone calls from a driver who's at a dock who can't get loaded or can't get out or can't get in, and they want you to be a part of that with them. They want you to go through it with them, because even if they can handle it, they still feel like you need to be there anyway. All these different things that's going to happen to you. Are you ready for that? Are you prepared for that? And is that that's what you want? Now, once you're sure you want that, all right, now we can move to the next step. But to me, it's like first identifying what you want your life to look like, because to me, quality of life is the most important thing. And, they talk about work-life balance. I don't think there's ever really a work-life balance in real life. It's just like almost impossible to achieve. If anybody could show me how to do it, my number, I'll give them my number on a link in the bio. Just shoot it to me and call me. Let me know how to achieve work-life balance, because I'm very intentional about having it, and I do not have it at all, right?
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. And I'll tell you how, because you love what you're doing so much that you actually embody what work-life balance is. Your work and your life are the same thing. And so you've integrated it to, I get what you're saying, the idea of like, how can I do 4-hour work week, put it on autopilot, collect the checks, bring value, and, do all the things that we do. But the reality, so if that maybe is a fantasy, but this enthusiasm that comes through from you, this feels pretty like you're doing your life's purpose. This feels like you're doing your best work. That feels pretty damn balanced to me, man.
So I love what I do, and you're right. This is my life's purpose. But when I say the work-life balance part, it's like, man, I'd love to be spending more time with my children. Yeah. I'd love to be on vacation with my wife, spending more time with her. Yeah. Right? Like that's the part. Now, mind you, we're blessed to be in a position where my wife travels with me everywhere. Yeah. Right. And the kids are old enough to where they can kind of manage themselves, and they do travel with us too. They sell our merch and everything. So we have literally like a family business, but still, there's still more intentional time I'd like to spend with them. Even though we're together, we're working. Yeah. It's like we're working on Truck and Hustle. So it's everything becomes Truck and Hustle. So the dinner table is Truck and Hustle. What's going on with the event? What's going on with that? What's going on with merch? What's going on with that? Everything becomes Truck and Hustle. And sometimes you want to disconnect from that and be able to just get back into the relationship. But when Truck and Hustle starts to take over so much, it's like we don't have anything to talk about but Truck and Hustle anymore. Yeah. So that's what I mean by being able to create that balance. That's what's difficult. But you're absolutely right in the statement that this is my purpose. I love what I do. And this is beyond just trucking, transportation, logistics. I love just meeting, connecting people, and just being, it's just helping people, like just being impactful in people's lives. It doesn't matter if it's in a truck, and if we were doing ice cream and hustle, I don't care. If we could help people and add value, I would love it. Like that's just what I'm about. I love to help people, and that's just always been innately who I am. And probably because I've always had people help me throughout my life. All the success that I've kind of had it's always been through my network or somebody looking out for me or doing something for me. I didn't go to college. I didn't have a bunch of, accolades or anything to get in position to work in the transportation jobs I did. I got them because somebody said, hey, I like you. I want to put you in position. So I always feel like I got to pay that back. And I always try to put other people in position as well. So, yeah, I love doing what I'm doing, but it's still just difficult to achieve that, that perfection of just work-life balance. If that's what it's even called nowadays, I don't even know what they call it. They come with a new term every week, so I don't know.
Man, I think you will in 25 years from now, when the kids are much older and you've got grandkids and these types of things, I think you will look back very fondly at this time, what you just described to me, and you will see probably a balance in hindsight, because you, like me, have this striver's mentality, which it's the driving force behind what you do, but it leaves us feeling continually and forever unsatisfied and wanting. And so you will never have work-life balance, because in your mind, you will never be able to achieve what is, you used to use the word perfection, and that's an illusion. And so as you chase into, you'll be like, it doesn't matter, even if you had, because in many ways people would say, like you just described a very romantic story. You just described this, like, we're at the table, the family's involved, we traveled together, the kids are selling merch. Like, that is incredibly, I mean, there are a lot of people listening to this, man, being like, they would kill to have an experience like that. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, as you kind of, as you, I think it's oftentimes it's hindsight that draws perspective. Unfortunately, I think at times, but you just described a very beautiful situation. So I want to at least pause on that and make sure that there's that there's some, that's a pretty nice thing to be able to do, man. And things are going well in that way. I get it. There's all sorts of shit in the middle, and it's difficult to kind of get exactly where we want to be always. But man, you're doing a great service for the world. You're doing a great service for the community. I can see why 100% you're building a great community. And then even be able to bring your family in there. This is just you're just such a real human being, and it's been a real privilege to get to know you, on this show.
Thank you so much. Likewise, man. I appreciate the opportunity. And, I would just say to everybody listening, man, number one, definitely make sure you go check out Chuck. Are we done, or is this the end of this?
Go, do
okay.
it. Yeah, go.
Okay.
Go.
I don't want to cut you short.
No, I feel like we're in a perfect flow right now to do that. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, but I would just say, anybody who's not subscribed to Truck and Hustle, please check us out on all, social media channels as Truck, TRUCK, the letter N, Hustle. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, anywhere. I'm Rahmel Wattley on LinkedIn. You can find me there, connect with me directly. And also just Freight Fest, man. I'm just super excited about Freight Fest. I implore, everybody to come and check us out at Freight Fest, September 28th through October 1st. It's going to be our second annual conference, and it's going to be amazing. We have a really great lineup. You can see that at freightfest.com, www.freightfest.com. We're still adding speakers. I call Freight Fest this year the land of opportunity because we're going to be bringing a lot of opportunity on stage, right? Last year was about education and just kind of telling stories, kind of like what we do on Truck and Hustle. But this year, we know that the industry is hurting, so we're focusing on bringing people who could provide opportunities. So that's what it's all about. So definitely want to see everybody out there. And just Justin, again, man, thank you for allowing me this platform to speak and tell my story. And salute to you, man. I understand what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So keep fighting the good fight. Anything I could do to be a resource, I'm always here.
Okay, man. Well, my absolute pleasure. And again, thanks for coming on, and all listeners, definitely check this out. And if you haven't already, there's something here. And I guess with that, we'll sign off. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Rose Rocket podcast. Be well, and tune into Rahmel's show to hear me in the next couple of weeks. So we're gonna do the opposite. So again, brother, thanks, man, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
For sure. Thank you so much, Justin. Take care.
Okay. All right, man. Be well.